Hey guys, this is Carrie, and in this video we're going to continue to mess around with the canvas, and we're going to try to create, I guess, a moving image project. So let's make HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and we'll call this moving images. So similar to our last project, we can actually get started in kind of the same way. We're going to create a canvas element on the HTML, and I'm going to choose to keep the width and height the same as last time. In order to get the canvas element to appear on the page, I'm going to copy and paste this CSS, which will give it a border and also center it. I'm going to highlight these and indent them so that it matches the format that we're used to. Next up for the JavaScript, we have a couple of tools down here, which are how to create a rectangle and how to create a circle. So let's load up the page. Looks good. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to draw a rectangle on the page, and then I'm going to have the rectangle move across the page. So I'm thinking that I'd like my rectangle to move to the right. So I'm going to start it off at a coordinate that's on the left border. So let me grab the coordinate or the rule for the rectangle. So, and before we do this actually, whenever we want to draw on the canvas, we need to select the canvas and get the canvas's context. The context is like a set of tools that allow us to draw onto the canvas. Now that we've got the context, I want to draw a rectangle. So I'm just going to add a comment here that what we're doing right in this step is drawing a rectangle. All right, now every time we draw a rectangle, we're going to have different x, y, width, and height values. These should be numbers. So I'm thinking to draw a rectangle maybe at 0 for x, because I want to start on the left, and then down maybe 100. So let me put x and y coordinates of 0 and 100. And then the width and height really don't matter. So let me do a width of, I don't know, 75 and a height of 30 or 40. Let's see how that looks. Okay, cool. So I've got my rectangle and I'm ready to have it float across the screen. One thing, well, actually no, let's just keep going with this. All right, so this is drawing a rectangle. Now, if you think about what animation actually is, in computer science, animation is kind of like a flip book that you might draw with paper and your hand. And what I mean by that is it's basically going to be a set of different images that change over time. So the first time we draw the image, it will be here. Then what we're going to do is we're going to redraw the image, but it'll be a little bit to the right. And then we'll redraw the image to the right. And then we'll redraw the image to the right. We'll redraw the image to the right. We'll redraw the image to the right. And as we play through these images, what it will do is it will create the illusion of this image moving across the screen, because each frame will have the image in a new position. So in order to make this simpler, we can take advantage of the work that we did with loops. So let's draw one of our loops. We're going to do a set interval loop. And what we're going to do here is we're going to write a function that's going to repeat every second or so. So let me start off by repeating every 10th of a second. So every second would be 1,000 microseconds. So every second will be, every 10th of a second will be 100 microseconds. All right, now for the function that's going to repeat, I'm going to draw the rectangle. So I'm going to cut the, or actually let me just include the comment here. I'm going to cut the rectangle part out that we just drew, and I'm going to move it into the set interval function. I'm going to highlight these and then press tab to make sure that the indentation seems consistent. So let's refresh it and see if it animates. It doesn't animate. And the reason why it doesn't animate is we wanted to, well, what's happening is we're redrawing the rectangle at the exact same coordinates every time. We're drawing it at 0, 100, and then with a width of 75 and a height of 40. In order to make it move, we need to change this x coordinate. So let's go outside of the loop and let's create a variable called, I'm going to call it x1 in case we want to have multiple shapes move across the screen. And I'm going to say let x1 equal 0. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, every time we draw this rectangle, don't draw it at 0, 100 for the starting coordinate here in the corner. Draw it at x1, comma 100. And what this will allow us to do is, because x1 is a variable, we're going to be able to change that later on. So this shouldn't change anything. Okay, great. And now what we're going to do here is increment x1 so that the rectangle moves. So what I mean by that is, if we want the rectangle to move to the right, then what we want to do is we want this x value to slowly increase. So what we can do is we can say, and we're not going to use let here. We want to take the same x1 that we created here. We're not going to make a new variable, which is what let does. So we'll say x1, the one that starts at 0, will equal the old value of x1 plus 1. And what this will do is it will, the first time through, it will be 0 plus 1. So now x1 is 1. The next time through, because x1 is 1, it will be 1 plus 1. So now x1 will be 2. And so every time through the loop, this x value is going to increase by 1, which should move us across the page. And it looks good, except you may notice a problem here. If we wanted to move faster, we could do x1 plus 2, twice as fast. All right, so the problem basically is that the rectangle is moving, but it looks like it's growing, and it's not actually growing. What's happening is the part that's over here is actually the old rectangle that we haven't erased. So what's happening is we keep drawing the rectangle, and it's moving to the right, but we need to erase the old rectangles in order for it to actually move. So to erase the old rectangles, the simplest way to do that is to redraw the background every time before we draw the rectangle. So what will happen then if we redraw the background is it will draw the background on top of the whole image, which will erase everything. And then we'll draw our image in the new position each time through. So to draw the background is actually just a big rectangle. So I'm going to make my background blue. So let me copy and paste. I can go over here and do it. Let me copy and paste my rectangle code. Let me highlight and indent it so that it looks proper. And we're putting this in the set interval loop because every time we loop through, we want to draw the background, then draw the rectangle in the new position, then change the x value. And that will erase the screen by drawing the background, and then allow us to draw the rectangle. So let's see here. I'm going to make the background blue. We're going to begin a path. The background is just a big rectangle that starts at 0, 0, and has a width of 800 and a height of 600. And so this will be a blue rectangle that covers the entire canvas, which can serve as a background. So let's see how that looks. Super cool. So now we have a rectangle floating across. And the reason why it's floating is every time we're drawing this, we are drawing the blue background, which erases the old green rectangles and then creates the new ones. All right, let's see here. I don't really like how jumpy this is. Maybe we can move it a little bit faster. Okay, so if we get the loop to repeat more frequently, it actually looks less jumpy. I think like every 25 microseconds looks like a pretty good timing. And maybe we can make this increase in speed a little bit there. Okay, cool. So I like the way that the rectangle kind of floats across the screen here. Now, one thing that we're going to want to do is we might want to make it so that the rectangle, after exiting the canvas, reappears on the other side, kind of Pac-Man style. So what that does basically is if the rectangle goes past this line, that will mean that the x1 coordinate is greater than 800. And we want, when the x coordinate is greater than 800, to reset it back to the left-hand wall, which is 0. So what we can do here is, if x1 is greater than the width of the screen, then reset x1 back to 0. And what that will do is basically the Pac-Man style thing here. So let's just refresh it. Super cool. All right, so maybe some cool challenges would be, can you create an object that moves downward across the screen and then reappears at the top? Can you create an object that moves to the left across the screen and then reappears on the right? Can you create an object that starts at the bottom and then when it moves to the top, it reappears on the bottom? What about diagonal lines? Can you create objects that move in diagonal lines? Or, and this one's really interesting, I think, can you create maybe a circle that bounces around like a ping pong ball in here off the walls? So there's a lot that you can do with animation here. And if you want to animate more complex shapes moving across your screen, I can definitely show you how to do that, so please call me over. All right, guys, so let's try to create something using moving images in order to get more practice with the canvas, because basically having a set interval loop that repeatedly draws things on the screen and updates their position is what the game is.